I am Radhika Nair. I work as a project manager with the Olga Tennison Autism Research Center. And I've got Josephine Barbara, who's the associate professor and a registered psychologist, and also the creator of MoSAIC. So MoSAIC is monitoring of social attention, interaction, and communication tools. So I'll start with giving you a little bit introduction about what this research is about and what we've done in the last 15 years before we've embarked on the research commercialization journey. So the beginning really started with Dr. Josephine Barbara's PhD and during her postdoc, where she created the social communication, social attention communication surveillance tool. During her PhD, she trained more than 350 maternal child health nurses to identify early signs of autism, to look at social attention and communication behavior in children aged between 12 months and 24 months of age. So overall, over 38,000 children were looked at over 2 large scale studies, which was in 2006. And then, so this tool was developed approximately over 15 years of, more than 15 years really. The mean age of identification is 21 months. But when we say that it's a mean identification, this tool was developed to understand, to identify and detect the early signs of children as young as 12 months of age. We found that the tool is 83% accurate, which means that it is the most accurate early detection method available in the world. We have then gone and translated this into 12 different languages, 8 different languages, and we've and more than 12 countries now have adopted the SACS research and the SACS tool. We've worked with during this time, we've worked with government like the Department of Health. We've worked with Department of Tasmania, Health Department in Tasmania, with New Zealand, with the different health departments. We worked with industry partners. We've worked with research organizations, hospitals, in order to disseminate, in order to train health professionals like pediatricians, community health nurses, allied health professionals, and so on. So we've worked with different health professionals in order so we pretty much trained them in adopting and in the use of the SACS. We then went and developed this into an app. It's a free app which is designed for parents to monitor the early signs of autism. So this allows parents to sit in the comfort of their home and look through videos that we've created, and then look at the signs. What it does at the end of is that the parent answers questions, and at the end of answering those questions, a result is provided to the parents, and a recommendation based on the results. We give them recommendations whether they need to go and see a health professional. What we've done now is we've translated this into 2 different languages, into Spanish language as well as Chinese. We're currently working with an autism intervention center in Slovakia to translate into Slovakian language. We're also speaking with our partners in Italy to actually translate this into an Italian language as well. So over the 15 years of time, we've worked with numerous organizations. We've brought in and we validated this tool, and which is why we can comfortably say that this tool is the most accurate. So based on this, we went into the commercialization part. So initially what we started to do is we work very closely with the industry engagement, innovation and commercialization team. What we did is we looked at what our IP, looked at the IP, we did a due diligence. Normally a due diligence is done when it comes to mergers as well as acquisitions, but because this has been in the research for the last 15, we wanted to make sure that the IP rights is clean, the ownership still lies within the university and the creator. We wanted to make sure that there was nothing was diluted. We also wanted to check on the current IP and the status of all products and do a quick audit to understand what we've trademarked, what needs to be trademarked, for instance, what we have as copyright and so forth. Because over the period of the 15 years, not only have we developed the AS Detect app, we've also developed various training programs for health professionals as well. And we've also now in the process of developing other products as well. So we did a whole audit on that. We also looked at the operational freedom because we didn't want the rights to exist somewhere else as part of a research project or a donation that we received. We wanted to make sure there were no legal restrictions in the way that we can operate this when we actually become a commercialized company. In order to, and it's very important because when we go on to seek funding, it's important because investors would like to know. They would like to know if the IP still is clean, if there are any operational issues. It's very important to give them that comfort, and it also shows that we know what we're talking. We also, as part of this, we analyze the value of the IP as well as any risks associated with it as well. Based on that, we actually worked. After that, we worked with the consultants, so which Trobe helped bring as a consultant in to work to develop a business model. Now, the business model is a very, very long process. It's very highly iterative. You could never get a right business model. It goes through various iterations. It's important to look at the business model, look at your product as a whole, and look at different sort of avenues when you actually and create a business model. For instance, you need to look at what your mission or your vision is going to be, what your core values of the company will be, what is your value proposition, for example, who your customers are, and what customer channels will you use to reach them, for instance, what your cost structure is going to be and your revenue stream. What are your key activities that you would take as soon as you want to form this company? And who's going to be your partners, and who's going to be your new partners that you would like to work with, and what's the strategy for that? So the business model pretty much brings all these components together into one document, and then it helps you form a strategy, form a goal, KPIs, things that you can, and then from there you can understand what your revenue streams are going to be, what your revenue model will look for the next 3 years, for the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. And that's what we did. And then the next most important thing is to test our critical assumptions. So when you prepare a business model, we assume a lot of things. We already know, who, so for example, we might know who our products is for, who our customers are for, but it's still important to actually test your critical assumption. The best thing to do is, if you haven't done that, is to create a minimal viable product, get out there into, who you think your customers are, test it out with them, understand what their customer journey is. More or less, you find that there are customer segments that you haven't thought about. You might identify another opportunity that you can tap into, and that really brings, and that just makes that you're validating your business model, you're validating your revenue stream or your cost structure, with this whole business model. And that's something very, very important to do, is to talk to as many customers as you can. Customers are the key, because obviously when you're commercializing something, you want paying customers, you want people to use your product, whether they're paying customers. In our case, we had non-paying customers as well as paying customers. We know that our parents do not pay to use the app. It was still going to be a free app, whereas our other components of the product, different products that we have, which are pretty much designed for health professionals, they're all paid products. So we wanted to test exactly how much will they pay, for instance, Is this something that we've said in our revenue, in our cost structure? Is it something that's feasible? Is it something that needs to be changed? So it's very important to test. For us, the lucky thing was that we already created a minimal viable product earlier. We tested it out, so we already had those results. So when you actually go out with a pitch deck, to attract investors, it's very important to have these answers, because these are the questions that you would get in terms of, who your customers, have you tested it? Do you think they would use the product? Because what it does is your product might have the basic features. Going out in the market just lets you know exactly what's needed. And that's when the product iteration begins. And you need to have answers for that. We worked with the innovation and commercialization team and the legal team to finalize the term sheets. Now, for people who don't know what the term sheets are, they're pretty much a document that establishes a general term. So in terms of a university, it goes through different levels of approvals, because what a term sheet really highlights, it gives us the basic terms and conditions for an investment. It tells us, who owns the licensing or the IP, what the shared distribution is going to look like. Are we going to have any employee share options, for instance? It's going to talk about, the governance, what it means when you develop a new product from the existing IP, what happens, who owns the ownership. It also gives a cap table, a capitalization table as well. So this pretty much needs to be approved by all your committee members, by the school, by the center. So they're all very comfortable. So there needs to be, it's a long process of getting those approvals and sign off from relevant stakeholders so that we can actually then proceed. Because what happens at the term sheet, once this is agreed, this is what the structure would look like. This is what it's going to be in terms of revenue. This is what's going to be this is what it would look like in terms of the sharing mechanism and so forth. So it's very important to get that sign off before you actually move ahead. So some of the learnings. So I did touch base a little bit on that in the earlier slide. So it's very, very important to understand the market and their needs. And it's more or less, like I said, sometimes we may assume things. We may assume that, a health professional would be really happy because, our product, does X, Y, and Z. Yes, it is important that, to mitigate their pain points or their challenges, but it's also important to see whether it would work within the environment. It is also important to see, is it something that, and more or less likely, for example, it's very important to know who your paying customers are. So a user could be someone else, whereas your paying customer could be, a classic example is, for example, our tool, we would market it for, say, GPs to use it. But the GPs are the users, whereas the clinics would be our paying customers. So it's important to have that demarcation to understand who your paying customers are. And that's very, very important. And then to know exactly how you would like to market this and how you would like to position your products. That's very, very important. Now, again, navigating the complexities of the healthcare market, it is very, very complex. Different users, they have different customer journeys. They use, at least in our case, we found there are different use cases. So it was important for us to know what those use cases were so that we can actually create solutions to make it easier for them, so that it's quick for them to use. But it was also important for us to then also to target the paying customers or the clinics or the health departments. So it was very important for us to do that and understand what the complexities existed. The other part is to know your competition. When you're in the research field, you know what other researchers are doing, but it's very different when you want to commercialize. You really want to dig deep. You want to know what your competition would even look like after you've launched in the next 2 years, 3 years. You want to know what your competitors are doing. And sometimes, in our case, we did a complete competitor analysis, and we found, and who we thought as to be a competitor, we thought that they were, after speaking with them, we found that they were more of a complementary partner for us than being a competition, for instance. So it's important to know your competition, to see what is in the market already, what the price points are, who they serve, and how is your value proposition going to be different to them? What is it that you're bringing? And also to know what's there in the pipeline in the next 2 or 3 years or the next 5 years, what this research would mean, what the new developments would mean. So it's important. It's very, very important to know that competition. Now, research and commercialization, they're again very, very two different things. When we research, we have a different cap on. It's a different mindset. You're more impact focused. You want to know what your research would yield, whereas commercialization is about, it's highly different, because it's, again, commercializing your research. It's about bringing that revenue in, to know what your goals are going to be. You want to know whether your commercialization vehicle is going to be more social, is going to attract more of a social change, or is it going to be simply a profit-oriented company? So these are the kind of things that you need to make that decision when you want to commercialize your research, when you want to commercialize your IP. It's important to know where it is. And as a creator, co-creator, you need to be very comfortable with what your goals are, what your values for the company, and what your strategy is as well. So then we can then achieve those. Protecting the IP right from the beginning, whether you're a student, a PhD student, or whether you're a researcher, it's important to protect your IP. It's important to own the IP if you can, and also to ensure that anything that comes out of it is registered. You've got a trademark, or you've got whatever means that you have that you're protecting it. Stakeholder management, again, this is very, very important, especially in a university environment. You have different levels of stakeholders with different interests. And it is very important, right from the people that you work with within your center, to the center lead head, to the school, to the broader university, to the committee members, to the council. It's very, very important to have that open communication and take them through this journey. So you don't actually have any sort of surprises in the end. This was a huge learning for us through the way that we structured our company. Was envisaged by some of our stakeholders slightly differently. So we had to then work with them in order to agree and come together on agreeable terms. So this was a huge learning for us. We thought that we had taken them onto our journey, but obviously, it was, we learned it quite late. They were not in the same page as us. But the good news is that we're working with them in order to move forward. Having the right team is also very important. Again, why? Because as soon as you want to commercialize, as soon as you get your investment, you want to have a team that's on board, is full on hands, and they're committed. It's going to be a lot of hard work in the next, the first 2-3 years till this company establishes. There is a lot of developments that you would need to do, a lot of new partnerships, new strategic avenues that you will have to take. So you need to have a really right team, and that starts with having a seasoned CEO who can, if you can bring them on board, that's wonderful. The way we approached it is that we did bring in a CEO who would mentor and coach Josephine Barbaro here to become a CEO, depending on how she feels. So it's important to get a seasoned CEO to drive that strategy, to drive that company ahead, but it's also important to have the other people supporting the CEO with enough experience and commitment. The other last part is to engage with investors who share similar values. So it's very important right in the beginning to understand who you would like to pitch this to, who your investors should be. Because there's no point if you're driving, if your company is focused on a social change, for instance, it's not as revenue focused, you wouldn't want to go to a private equity investor. You would look for more like an angel investor, or you look for someone who invests for projects that have the social change attribute to it. So it's important because it's very, things can go completely sour very quickly if it's not very clear. If you take an investment from investors who have very different viewpoint on the way that you should run the company, the way that you should structure it. So it's very important to actually engage with investors that you think will benefit. Yeah, the other thing that I did mention here is also to have a board, or have board members who would complement what you want to do. So you bring in board members from different avenues and ensure that they are invested. So you bring in board members from the strategy area, from the obviously from the university will represent, because they would be one of the shareholders in our case, because the IP is owned by the university. But it's also important to bring external board members into the mix to actually have that diversity, to actually have that vision to grow the company. So what now? What are we doing? So like I said, we're working on the company structure with our center leads. We're formalizing it. And what we're also doing is at the same time looking at the regulatory compliance, where we're working out whether we need to get a TGA approval. And we're also looking at compliance for all our products as well. So we're working on that, as well as on the product development. So based on our market research and validation, we know that we need to develop some new products, but also add some new functionalities for our existing products. So we're actually working on those iterations so that we're ready. And we're now waiting on final approvals for funding from the center. But the good news is the university has backed us all this while. They have been very, very positive. And the important thing is we've got approvals from them. So we've got approvals from all the main industry engagement leaders, but also from the university end. So we're just waiting for our final funding to embark into this new journey for us, really. So yes, I just wanted to finish this off with our customers and partners that we've worked with, and some of the customer testimonials that we've received. Yeah, and I don't know if we've developed this video which actually just talks about what our product is for another workshop, and I thought I would just play that it's just about 2 minutes. I'm not sure if we're still running okay for time. Yeah, okay, I get a nod. All right, so let's start the video. So yeah, and that's the end of my presentation. So yeah, last point or the learning is also commercialization is hard. It's a lot of work, but it's very exciting. Yeah, it's amazing. You know, if you can see this through, the outcome's going to be quite rewarding. The other part is that when you go out to the investors, you need to have all the answers with you. You need to be confident. You need to have a story. If you're able to tell a story, if you're able to believe in what you're doing, I'm pretty sure that you will succeed in getting the investors you need. So yeah, that's pretty much from me.